But Jay, what do you have?
Chill.
Locker room disputes.
Okay.
I think Tyler like this one.
Yes, I love this.
How often do they happen? Is this a reoccurring thing? How does it affect the team chemistry? Locker room disputes happen quite often.
And there's levels to it.
And there's definitely levels to it, right? You got to think the locker room is such a unique place, right? There's people from different religious backgrounds, economic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. And a lot of times when those characteristics get mixed in, disputes happen, right? Now the question is, we always had a saying, never let things that happen on the field bleed into the locker room, right? And it's easier said than done. And I bring this up because obviously, unless you've been on a rock, everybody saw the interview post-game that A.J. Brown had with the media, and we're going to play a short clip of it.
What are some things you think that the offense needs to improve on? Passing. What are the conversations like with Jalen during a game like this, where maybe the passing game isn't everything you want it to be?
Not too much conversation, honestly. I don't know.
Now, this isn't uncommon for receivers once they're not getting the football. A.J. Brown's a top 5 receiver in the league, and some may even say he's a top 3 receiver in the league. And it's been noticeable how his targets have gone down this year. And when you go back and watch the film, there are opportunities there. I remember Tom Brady vividly saying, my number one guy, I always wanted to get him going early, right? Just so he can get in a rhythm in the game. I can get into a rhythm of the game. When your top playmaker is happy on the outside, it just makes the flow of the offense a lot better, right? And we've seen, again, with Saquon's, uptick in carries, his numbers go down. But I don't equate that to, A.J. Brown not getting opportunities, because when you look at somebody like Lamar Jackson and their rushing offense, he's still top 2 in passing yards. Well, because of the bye now, he's like top 10 in passing yards.
He's tops.
Yeah, he's top 2 in passing touchdowns, right? So when you talk about a team that actually runs the ball, but still Lamar Jackson is throwing the ball all around the yard, you can still do it as well. So when you look at it and when you look at film, there are times A.J. Brown has opportunities. Jalen Hurts just doesn't turn it loose, and he takes off and runs, right? So obviously A.J. Brown is frustrated because when you have an elite playmaker on the outside, they want to get the ball. They want to feel like they're helping the team win. I just find this one unique, Kyle, because if you don't remember, A.J. Brown was so happy when he got traded to Philly.
They're homies.
Him and Jalen Hurts are supposed to be best friends.
Yes.
Like, they talked about it. I think A.J. Brown, even in the offseason before Jalen Hurts got paid, said, if Howie doesn't pay Jalen Hurts this offseason, go ahead and send me to wherever you're sending him, because I'm going to leave with my friend. And sometimes that's an issue. Like, when your close friend or best friend is indicative of how you do your job, that's a thin line right there, right? So, like, I go back to a former Eagles team, 2004, T.O., Donovan McNabb, right? And they weren't the best of friends, but obviously there was some tension between those two. But they still made a run all the way to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Even with T.O. getting hurt that year. Remember, that was the horse collar year.
Broken leg.
They essentially made the rule for horse collar tackle. But even in that Super Bowl, Donovan McNabb threw for over 300 yards, right? T.O. had 9 catches for 120 yards. So, yes, disputes like this happen all the time. But, yes, players understand you have to be a professional and you got to work some things out. Now, another thing I want to touch about on that clip was, the first thing the reporter asked him is, what can you do to improve the offense? He says passing, short and sweet, which we already know puts a bullseye on Jalen Hurts because he's the one throwing the football. But then it was a double down after that. Later on in that interview, they asked him about with the offense, not really getting the passing game going. What conversations happened between you and Jalen Hurts? And he goes, not any conversations really, which is rare because how many times have we panned to the sideline when a receiver is talking to a quarterback trying to get on the same page? Even if there's, some extra energy in the conversation, you like to see those two talking about
like Diggs and Allen.
Yeah, just because you want to get on the same page and both guys are competitive. Now, again, you don't want to show up your quarterback, so you have to do it, be smart about it, right? And be strategic how you talk to your quarterback, right? Because that is the guy getting you the football. But I think it's something to be said that they're not even talking on the sideline about it. And I'm going to have Harry run one more clip. Brandon Graham is a guy that's been with the Eagles his whole career.
Everybody loves
14,
BG.
15 years. And Brandon Graham can be very honest and too honest sometimes. So I'm going to show this clip. Harry going to roll the clip of Brandon Graham talking about the situation between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts.
I know that one is trying. And 11 could be a little better.
with how he responds to things. And they was friends before this. It's like, man, but things have changed, and I understand that because life happens. But it's the business side that we have to make sure that we don't let the personal get in the way of the business, and that's what we got to do better as right now.
Yeah, so to me, that's a little different, right? Because when you look at Donovan and T.O., they weren't the best of friends, right, coming into this scenario. It was a business arrangement, right? And the thing is, I think BG literally antiquated that perfectly. Like, you have to separate the personal from the business, and you worry because they are so close. Will this affect the business side of things? Now, Kyle, we've seen multiple disagreements between teammates, and at the end of the day, we all know that this is a business, right? We have to be professional. We can go out there and do our jobs. As long as there's a line of respect, like, things will get worked out. Right now, this one seems a little bit concerning because when Brandon Graham, who again is a captain on this team, has respect from everybody on this team, says when he's talking about 1-11, obviously he's talking about the numbers of Jalen Hurts and also A.J. Brown. He's saying that, they were friends, but I don't know if it's like that anymore.
Things have changed.
Things have changed, which makes you a little nervous just because, again, you got to separate the personal from the business. And I think they will be able to get this thing done. I would not be surprised the next game out if A.J. Brown gets 11 targets, right? Because Nick Sirianni's going to talk to Kellen Moore, and we got to get this.
All right, buddy. You want more passes?
We got to get this guy going, right? But it is a little bit concerning because they do have a close relationship.
And there's levels to this shit as it pertains to the quarterback with which comes, is under question. So, for example, if there's a disconnect in Kansas City, you know that the guy Patrick Mahomes is going to be okay.
Correct.
And you know that he's going to be able to figure it out. The issue with Jalen Hurts is that he doesn't fall in that top echelon of quarterbacks. And for a guy like A.J. Brown, he feels like he is one of these top echelon wide receivers. What's the issue? We've got the best running back in football. We got the best offensive line in football. Our running game has been potent and explosive, which should lead to an explosive passing game as well. I understand the frustration for A.J. Brown. And one thing that's unique about the receiver position, it's not like when I'm an offensive lineman and we run to the left, I want him to run to the right, to my side. I'm the right guard. I want the highlight to be right behind my ass cheek, like Penei Sewell. Okay, I want to be on Sports Center. Everybody wants to be on Sports Center. But I don't have to run 50 yards when the ball doesn't go my way. A.J. Brown has to run 9 routes. He's got to run deep overs. He's got to run corners. And imagine running 60 times a game and not getting the football. I'd be pissed off too. Thanks. But you know what? That's understandable. But what's not understandable is if this is your buddy, you got to find a way to go and communicate. It's like a marriage. It's like a relationship. You're engaged. You got a beautiful fiance. You guys have to talk it out about some stuff, I'm sure. And when you don't, it doesn't get any better, right?
Thanks.
So let's talk it out. I feel like that's number one. And they're doing all this talking in the media. Man. Let's close the doors and talk. Let's close the doors a little bit and talk. And then roll it out there on Sunday and let A.J. Brown get 150 yards on 10 catches.
There is something, though, about wide receiver quarterback relationship that's unique even within an NFL locker room because I think it's like the only positional group that is solely dependent on one other positional.
Correct.
Right? Like a wide receiver gets paid based solely off of
O-line and quarterback.
Well, yeah, but like mainly the quarterback. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, is that guy
quarterback has to throw it to him?
So if you go to we talk about it like in the draft, if you go and you're drafted by a team that's super run heavy and doesn't have a good quarterback, it's just like your earning potential is less than if you get drafted by, say, the Cincinnati Bengals. And, you have Joe Burrow there throwing you the football. It just is, unfortunately. So A.J. Brown, he's not necessarily like in a contract year. He's actually signed through like 2028 at this point for the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's not really like it's costing him money to not produce on the football field, but it's still private at that point. And it's still, again, it's one guy that if he's not playing well, Jalen Hurts, and not finding you, you could do your job as good as humanly possible.
Doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
Yeah.
Every other position on the football field, that's not really the case. Like you get paid based off of what you do on a play in and play out basis. Fortunately for wide receivers, it ain't that simple.
What's your level of concern moving forward for this unit?
So people had that concern with Nick Sirianni in the beginning, and I kept telling everybody, pump your brakes. Like,
they're like 8-0 since he shaved his head like Britney Spears.
Yeah,
so
I think they'll figure it out. I'm with you though. Like that was my biggest concern. Like, why are we talking about this in front of the media? Like, if that is your close friend,
and BG is an OG, he understands.
So I was going to talk about him, but A.J. Brown first. Like, if that's your close friend, like talk to him on the side.
Yep.
Right? But I mean, BG alluded to it. Maybe they're not as close anymore. But that's still a conversation, even professional wise. Like you can still talk to him on the side, even if y'all aren't as close anymore. And BG, again, you're the captain of this team. You know better than to air that dirty laundry out because now AJ and Jalen have to answer those questions every single day now. We always had a rule, right, Kyle? Do not be a distraction to the locker room. This has caused a distraction because two players went to the media and talked about it. Like people had been talking about it a little bit in the media and AJ Brown not getting involved, but it wasn't a over like bearing concerning thing because the Eagles were still winning games. Right, they were like an 8-9 game win streak, so nobody was really talking about it. And clearly, yes, AJ Brown was frustrated, so people are going to mention it, but it wouldn't have took it to where it is now if you didn't say passing and then also double down and say, well, we really don't talk about it on the sideline. And then you have the OG, Brandon Graham, coming out and saying, one is trying his best. AJ could, handle it a little bit different. You didn't have to say any of that. It's just like our offense is working through some things. They'll get it together, right? Sometimes chemistry falls off between players. You just got to work through some things. That's all you had to say. And nobody would probably ask about it for the rest of the year. Because again, it's one thing if they were losing, but they're winning games. Yeah. So that's why like nobody would have made a big hoopla about it. But now obviously everybody's going to talk about it throughout this whole week.
When I was playing, we got Akeem Hicks in free agency. Mm-hmm. And this was at like the height of Akeem Hicks. Like he was
first off the Saints, right?
He was Godzilla. Yeah. I mean, literally. And I remember there was a stretch for about 3 or 4 years where I didn't break a sweat in practice. And then Akeem Hicks showed up. and that was my matchup every day. And, in large part due to Akeem Hicks, my body was just so beat up because I didn't want to lose to him. He didn't want to lose to me. And we were on the field fighting a literal war every day. But when we went back into the locker room, we could sit next to each other, pack a dip out of the same can, laugh a little bit about the practice. But what I'm going to get to with this Akeem Hicks thing is I started dealing with injuries after he came in, and Akeem's trajectory went towards all pro. Yeah. And I remember I was really frustrated and embarrassed. And sometimes I would take it out on some of the younger guys that were in the room, scout team, defensive linemen. Yeah. I'd hit them late, do something dirty. And that's not me. And Akeem Hicks brought me to the side privately in the locker room. And he said, look, I'm in the room with these guys. A lot of these guys look up to you. When you do stuff like that, this is what it does. Mm-hmm. And this is how it makes them feel. And I can only imagine that bleeds into the other position rooms. And I remember how important it was for me that Akeem pulled me to the side and was like, you're a dude. Like, don't forget that. For sure. But also, these are guys that are become dudes based on what the leaders in the room are doing, which you are one of. And for AJ Brown, I would urge him to understand that he is the leader in that room. Like we talk about George Pickens being the most talented guy on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster. As he goes mentally, the team will go. Right. And I think that for a guy like AJ Brown, you need to find a way to get with Jalen Hurts, handle this thing privately. It will be priceless. You will never forget it because you could go on a run that will be historic. You could be the second world champion Eagles, and you guys are the biggest part of that. So handle it in-house. And I think that's the best bet.
Very well said. Very well said.